She overheard her name in a restroom conversation and understood why she was fired. Chapter 1. A promotion I never saw coming until I was gone. I still remember the morning like it was yesterday. The coffee in my travel mug was lukewarm. The elevator was jammed with half-awake co-workers, and I had a full inbox before I even turned on my monitor. Just another Monday, or so I thought. For 7 years, I gave everything to that company. Late nights, missed birthdays, skipped vacations. I believed in hard work. I believed that if you showed up, delivered results, treated people well, success would follow, and for a while it did. My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my 30s, my life was defined by one thing: my job. I started at Dalton & Associates as an entry-level account assistant. I worked my way up, one forgotten lunch and one weekend report at a time. I didn't just survive there. I built relationships, mentored interns, won over clients no one else could handle. And so, when the role of senior project manager opened, everyone assumed it was mine. Even Lindsay Moore, my friend from the department, joked over drinks a few nights before. "Well, I guess we'll be celebrating you soon, Em," she laughed. I smiled, but something in her voice felt rehearsed. Still, I shook it off. We were close, or so I thought. We'd started together. She was at my baby shower. I gave a toast at her engagement party. I didn't know it then, but that toast would be the last time I'd ever trust her. The morning after it was Thursday morning. I arrived early, as always. I wanted to be the first to hear the announcement. I'd prepared a list of ideas for the first quarter rollout. I was ready, but the email came before the meeting. Subject: New Senior Project Manager Appointment. From Patrick Dalton to all staff. Please join me in congratulating Lindsay Moore on her promotion to Senior Project Manager, effective immediately. I read it 3 times. My hands trembled. I blinked at the screen, trying to make it say something else. Anything else. Lindsay? The same Lindsay who asked me to double-check her projections last week? I felt the blood drain from my face. Then came the whispers, the slow turning of heads, toward my cubicle, and worst of all, her voice. "Oh my God, Em, I didn't know he was going to announce it today. I wanted to tell you myself. I didn't respond." I couldn't. I just stared at my monitor, my throat tightening. In that moment, I realized something awful. I hadn't just been overlooked. I'd been set up. Everything started making sense. In the days that followed, things that once seemed like coincidences now looked like signs. The presentation she accidentally deleted from the shared drive before my client pitch. The time she volunteered to help on the Thompson file, only for the numbers to mysteriously go wrong under my name. Her sudden closeness with Mr. Dalton after the company retreat. Still, I doubted myself. Gaslighting works best when it's slow and subtle. Until the restroom. That damn restroom. What I heard in that bathroom changed everything. It was Friday afternoon. I had just finished a meeting with Chloe from HR. She gave me the usual, "We appreciate your contribution" speech, like I was being laid off instead of congratulated. I went into the bathroom to cry, but the door creaked just as I stepped inside, and I froze. 2 voices, Lindsay and Chloe, laughing. "I told you," Lindsay said. "All I had to do was feed her ideas and let her do the work. Emily practically handed me the promotion." They laughed again. "Dalton thinks she's too emotional anyway," Chloe added. "It was easy to convince him." Silence. My breathing went shallow. "Besides," Lindsay whispered, "she doesn't know I have the photos." My heart stopped. "Photos? If she ever tried to fight it," she continued, "well, let's just say her little weekend with Ben might suddenly become a problem." Ben? My ex? From 2 years ago? I stumbled backward, knocking into the stall door. The laughter stopped. I heard Lindsay's voice, sharp now. "Someone's here." I ran out. I didn't look back. The lie beneath it all that night, I didn't sleep. Went through my old messages with Ben. There was nothing there. But I knew Lindsay. If she had even a grain of something, she'd twist it. She'd threaten me. And she had help. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with workplace drama. This was betrayal, coordinated, calculated, cold, by someone I once called a friend. But that was just the beginning. I decided not to confront her. Not yet. There's something more powerful than shouting the truth in anger, proving it, quietly, publicly, and with undeniable evidence. And I was about to get everything I needed, because karma, it doesn't forget, and neither do I. Chapter 2. I didn't mean to. Overhear it, but then I knew everything. I didn't go to work the next day. For the first time in 7 years, I called in sick. Not physically sick, but emotionally gutted. The kind of sick that makes your chest heavy, your stomach churn, and your thoughts swirl like a storm you can't outrun. I sat on my couch all day, staring at my phone, reading Lindsay's text over and over again. "Hey girl, just checking on you. Let me know if you need anything." I nearly threw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call her out. I wanted to forward the message to Chloe with, "Are you kidding me?" written in all caps. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew I needed more than righteous anger. I needed proof. Not just of what they said in the restroom, but of everything. The sabotage, the manipulation, the lies. And ironically, it was their arrogance that gave me exactly that. The hidden thread, I remembered something from earlier that month. A staff meeting where Lindsay had fumbled through a budget proposal and glanced nervously at Chloe, only to recover when Chloe subtly nodded. At the time, I thought maybe Chloe was just helping. Now I realized what it really was. A signal. Lindsay and Chloe weren't just acquaintances. They were aligned. And they were covering for each other. I started digging. Late that night in my pajamas, I pulled out my old external drive. I kept backups of every presentation, every email, every version of every major project I'd led. There. It was, the original Thompson file, the one Lindsay said had the wrong numbers under my name. Compared it to the version we submitted. Mine was perfect. The submitted one had errors added in the final revision, the revision she had offered to polish. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. She'd planted the mistake, deliberately, to discredit me, and I let her, a secret meeting I needed more. So I emailed Carla, one of the junior associates who used to help me with client briefings. "Hey, can we talk?" "Off the record," she replied almost instantly. We met at a cafe near the office. Carla looked nervous, like she knew this could come back, to bite her. "I don't want to be involved," she said right away. "I get it," I said. "I'm not asking you to take sides, I just want the truth." She looked around, then leaned in. "I heard something," she whispered. A couple weeks ago, before the Thompson meeting, Lindsay and Chloe were in the copy room. They didn't know I was behind the printer wall. "What did they say?" I asked, holding my breath. She said, "Lindsay said she couldn't believe Dalton still thought Emily was senior material." Chloe laughed and said, "Not for long. Just stick to the plan." I froze. The plan. So it wasn't just casual backstabbing, it was orchestrated. I felt like I was falling into a bottomless well. How long had they been doing this? How many moments had I chalked up to bad luck that were actually traps? I thanked Carla, promised not to name her, and walked out of that cafe with a new sense of clarity. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about justice. One more slip-up. The next Monday, I returned to work. I smiled at everyone like nothing happened. Lindsay was radiant, glowing in her new role. She greeted me with that same fake sweetness. "Emily, we missed you. Feeling better?" "Much better," I said with a smile. "Glad to see things running smoothly." She blinked. Was she thrown off by how calm I was? Good. Let her feel comfortable, because snakes always make the most mistakes when they think they've won, and then it happened. Lunchtime. I stepped into the restroom, and as fate would have it, the door opened just a second later. Lindsay and Chloe walked in, still talking. I was in the back stall, again. Only this time I pulled out my phone and hit record. "She doesn't suspect anything," Lindsay said, laughing. "Of course not," Chloe replied. "She thinks you're her friend." "Honestly, I thought she might try to fight it after the announcement," Lindsay continued. "But she just disappeared for the weekend. Probably crying into a bottle of wine." "As long as she stays quiet," Chloe said. "We're fine. The last thing we need is her finding out the promotion was decided 2 months ago." 2 months? Lindsay said. God, and she was still giving me tips on how to manage accounts like I was some intern. They both burst into laughter. I didn't cry this time. I didn't panic. I just hit save. The calm. Before the storm that night, I listened to the recording 10 times. Every syllable, every cruel laugh, every confirmation of the betrayal. I now had the altered files, the witness testimony from Carla, the bathroom recording, and most importantly, I had their own words proving they had rigged the process long before the promotion was announced. The Emily Carter from a week ago would have waited, would have begged for a quiet HR meeting, but not anymore. No, this time they picked the wrong woman to underestimate. Because sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need to give people a stage and let them expose themselves. Chapter 3. I had one chance to expose her, so I took it during her big presentation. The day of the quarterly meeting arrived like a storm front. Sunny skies outside, but inside me, thunder cracked with every step I took toward the conference room. This wasn't just another staff update. This was the presentation, the one where Lindsay, now freshly promoted, would present the results of the Thompson account to the full board. The same account I had nurtured for 2 years. The same data she had sabotaged to climb over me. And now she'd get to bask in the spotlight built from the rubble of my career, unless I stopped her. The setup I had a plan. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, strategic, the same way they'd plotted against me. Steps. 1, make it look like everything was fine. I wore my best blazer, navy blue, the one I always wore on my biggest presentation days. I even brought coffee to the meeting. For everyone. When I handed a cup to Lindsay, she blinked in surprise. "Oh my God, you're the sweetest," she said, completely unsuspecting. I smiled. "Break a leg today," she winked. "You mean crush it?" Oh, I meant something very different. The presentation. Begins, Chloe opened the meeting with the usual HR updates and morale buzzwords. Then came the moment they'd been waiting for. "And now," she said, beaming like a proud sister, "I'd like to hand it over to Lindsay, who's done an amazing job stepping into this leadership role." Lindsay stood, adjusted her silk blouse, and walked to the front like a queen ascending the throne. Her PowerPoint lit up the screen behind her. Slide 1. Client success. Thompson Financial. My stomach tightened. She started her speech, full of flair and false humility. "I just want to thank the whole team, especially Emily, who supported the early stages of this project." Early stages? She was rewriting history right there on stage. Then she clicked to the next slide. And that's when I moved. I stood slowly. All heads turned. Lindsay paused. "Emily?" she asked, her voice wavering just slightly. "Everything okay?" I smiled, gently. "I actually have something I'd like to contribute to this part of the presentation." if that's all right. Confused glances bounced around the room. Lindsay shifted, clearly thrown. I mean, we can talk after. I think it's important to clear something up before we move forward. I pulled out my USB drive from my blazer pocket, walked calmly to the console, plugged it into the HDMI port. She didn't stop me. She should have. The truth on the screen on. The screen appeared 2 documents side by side. On the left, the original Thompson budget proposal with my name and timestamp. Pristine, accurate, signed. On the right, the version Lindsay had submitted, the one with the intentional errors. I turned to the board. This was the document I submitted. This, I gestured, is what was altered. The room fell utterly silent. Then I played. The audio file, the recording from the restroom. Every word echoed through the speakers. She doesn't suspect anything. As long as she stays quiet, the last thing we need is her finding out the promotion was decided 2 months ago. Chloe's face turned the color of chalk. Lindsay's mouth dropped open. No, this is taken out of context, she stammered. That's illegal. You can't just record people. But the HR director seated beside me cut her off. Actually, given the circumstances and the location, this falls under employee misconduct reporting. Emily, please continue. I looked straight at Lindsay. You lied. You manipulated data, sabotaged my work, and conspired to steal credit for a project I spent years building. And then you laughed about it. Lindsay tried to regain composure, but the damage was done. The fallout. The meeting ended in chaos. Chloe was asked to step out for a private conversation. Lindsay didn't return to her desk. And I sat down, calmly, sipped the very coffee I'd brought. 2 hours later, HR called me in. They asked for every file, every piece of evidence, every detail. I gave them everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't cry. I let the facts speak for themselves, louder than any accusation ever could. By the end of the week, Chloe was put on administrative leave. Lindsay's promotion was revoked, and I was offered my old position back, plus a leadership training program, an apology, and a quiet promise that this would never happen again. But the most satisfying moment, it wasn't the HR meeting, it wasn't the promotion reversal, was later that Friday as I walked out of the building with my things that Lindsay stopped me in the parking lot. Her eyes were red. Makeup smeared! You didn't have to do that, she said bitterly. You embarrassed me. I looked her in the eyes and said quietly, No, Lindsay, you did that. I just stopped pretending not to see it. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't screaming or crying, it's silence, it's patience, it's letting the truth speak louder than your pain, and I had finally done just that. Chapter 4. The email she forgot to delete changed everything. The days following Olivia's confrontation with Danielle felt like a slow, painful unraveling. The confrontation had ended with icy silence, no admissions, no denials, just a chilling smirk from Danielle that haunted Olivia's thoughts. It was the look of someone who knew she had already won, but Olivia wasn't finished yet. Back at home, she was fueled by a quiet rage. Every word she heard in that bathroom echoed in her ears. She's just temporary. She doesn't even realize they're pushing her out. And now that she had finally stood up to Danielle, she expected fallout, retaliation, or worse, indifference. Still, there was one thing Danielle hadn't counted on: Olivia's memory. Danielle may have believed she had erased all traces of her scheming, but there was one detail she overlooked: the email. Olivia hadn't intended to go digging, not at first. She wasn't some tech-savvy hacker, and she didn't want to spend her evenings reliving betrayal. But she also couldn't shake the feeling that there was more, that what she heard in the bathroom was only the tip of the iceberg. One sleepless night, Olivia sat down at her computer and opened her old work laptop. Still functioning, still full of files. As she sifted through her inbox, searching for anything suspicious, she almost gave up. Most emails were generic: meeting invites, client correspondence, performance reviews that now felt laughably hollow. Then she opened the deleted items folder, and there it was, an email with a subject line that made her stomach twist: Succession. Planning, internal only. From Danielle Harper to Julia Quinn, HR Director. The date? 1 week before Olivia's promotion was rescinded. Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. Julia, let's move forward with the transition plan. Olivia doesn't have the right presence to manage client portfolios at this level. She's too passive and emotionally attached. Not the leadership profile we need. Let's discuss timing. I think we can shift her out gracefully by the end of Q3. D. There it was. Cold, calculated, cruel. Not only had Danielle orchestrated Olivia's removal, she had framed it as a professional decision cloaked in business language while plotting behind her back. And worse, she had sent this while smiling to Olivia's face, praising her performance, even suggesting that a promotion was just around the corner. Olivia sat frozen. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't politics or budget constraints or a shift in company direction. It was a betrayal, and not just by Danielle. Julia Quinn, the same HR director who had comforted Olivia after the layoff, who had handed her the exit paperwork with sympathetic eyes, had been in on it. All those conversations, the promises that something better would come her way. The reminders that these things happen in corporate life, they were lies. That email was her proof. But what could she do with it? Her first instinct was to forward it, to send it to the executive board, to make noise. But then she paused. She knew how these things worked. A single email might not be enough. They'd circle the wagons, protect each other, deny, deflect, delay. She needed something bigger. She needed a pattern, so she dug deeper. Over the next few days, Olivia combed through everything: emails, meeting notes, even Slack messages. And a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Danielle had done this before. One by one, Olivia found traces of similar transition plans. Quiet removals of capable employees, all women, all with strong voices and impressive records, each one framed as a restructuring or realignment. And each time, Danielle rose higher in the company ranks, placing her hand-picked allies in key positions. It wasn't just corporate ambition, it was systemic sabotage. And Olivia? She had been the next pawn to fall. Now she had the receipts. By the end of the week, she had compiled a full dossier: screenshots, timestamps, email chains, everything. She put it together not for revenge, but for truth. For the women who had been discarded before her, for the ones who were still there, unaware they were next. She didn't send it to the board. Not yet. Instead, she reached out to a name she hadn't thought of in years: Alyssa Rodriguez, a former colleague who had been mysteriously let go a year prior. Alyssa had always been sharp, outspoken, and dedicated, until she disappeared from the company overnight. No explanation, no farewell. Olivia sent her a message, just a few lines. "Hey, Alyssa, I think I finally understand what happened. I found something. Can we talk?" The reply came within the hour. "I've been waiting for this." Chapter 5. The woman they thought was gone fights back. Olivia hadn't seen Alyssa Rodriguez in over a year, but the moment they met at the corner coffee shop, it felt like no time had passed. Alyssa walked in with the same confident stride Olivia remembered, except now there was something sharper in her eyes. A quiet resolve, a woman who'd been through the fire and had come out forged, not broken. They sat in the far corner, out of earshot. Olivia slid the printed emails across the table, her hands trembling just slightly. Alyssa didn't need long. She skimmed the top of the first page and then looked up. "Danielle, of course, I knew it." "You knew?" Olivia asked. "I had a feeling," Alyssa replied, voice low but burning. "They told me I wasn't a cultural fit anymore. After I won the biggest account of the year, I asked for clarity. They said it was confidential." She tapped the email. "Now, I know what they meant," Olivia nodded. "They're doing it to others too. I found more." Alyssa leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her lips. "Then it's time we stop them." What unfolded over the next few weeks was a masterclass in strategic retaliation. Olivia and Alyssa formed a silent alliance, reconnecting with other former colleagues who had been quietly let go, ghosted, or shut out under vague explanations. Each of them had stories. Each had documents, records, names. They weren't just victims, they were witnesses. Together they built a case, a pattern of discrimination, abuse of power, corporate sabotage, and at the center of it all, Danielle Harper. But Olivia didn't want a whisper campaign. She wanted a reckoning. She knew legal action would take time. So they chose another path first. They went public. Alyssa had connections with an investigative journalist who had once exposed corruption in a major tech firm. They shared everything: emails, Slack screenshots, audio recordings Alyssa had taken during a suspicious exit interview. 2 weeks later, the exposé dropped. It hit the front page of a respected business journal. Inside the corporate coup, how a rising exec quietly eliminated her competition. Names were named: Danielle's, Julia's, even the board members who had turned a blind eye. The fallout was immediate. LinkedIn lit up. Clients began to ask questions. Shareholders demanded answers. And within days, the company released a statement. "We are conducting a thorough internal investigation and have placed key personnel on administrative leave." Danielle vanished from the website by the end of the week. But the real moment Olivia had waited for came in the form of an email, not from HR, not from the press, from a young woman named Tara, still working at the company. "I saw your story. I thought I was next. Thank you for speaking up. You saved me." Olivia stared at the message, her heart aching. For all the months she had spent blaming herself, doubting her worth, that single message reminded her she was never the problem. Danielle had underestimated her. She wasn't just passive, she was patient. She had waited until the moment was right. And when it came, she didn't just defend herself, she defended everyone who hadn't been able to. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt something unfamiliar blooming in her: chest, peace, and power. Chapter 6. HR called me back, but I didn't expect this. Olivia didn't expect to hear from the company again. Not after the exposé, not after Danielle's abrupt removal, but a week after the story went viral, her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in months: Human Resources, Corporate HQ. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to decline it, let them stew in silence like they had done to her. But curiosity won, she answered. "Olivia?" a familiar voice said, cautious. "It's Nathan Bloom, from HR." She remembered him, friendly, distant, the kind of man who smiled while saying nothing. He had sat in on her exit meeting barely, blinking when she asked for clarification. Now his voice carried a different tone. Measured, careful. "I know this call may be unexpected," he began, "but there have been some significant changes in leadership, and we'd like to speak with you, off the record." Her instincts kicked in. "Why now?" Nathan hesitated. "We're looking into what happened. It's deeper than we realized." That's rich, Olivia thought. Now you're realizing. Still, she agreed to meet. But this time, she brought Alyssa with her. When they arrived at the office building where they both used to spend their days, Everything looked the same on the surface. Same sleek lobby, same branded signage. But the energy had shifted. The receptionist gave her a nervous smile. Employees looked up as they passed, some whispering. The two women were escorted to a glass-walled conference room. Nathan was waiting, this time with a laptop and a notepad, not a dismissal packet. He stood to greet them. "Thank you for coming." Alyssa said nothing. Olivia nodded once. Nathan took a deep breath. "I won't insult you by pretending this meeting can fix what was done, but I've been tasked by the new interim CEO to reach out. We reviewed the materials you shared with the press, and..." He looked down, ashamed. "It was worse than we thought." They had already begun conducting internal interviews. Several resignations had followed Danielle's departure, including Julia, the so-called neutral HR rep who had been feeding Danielle inside information. "What do you want from us?" Alyssa asked sharply. "We'd like to make a formal apology," Nathan said, "and offer to reinstate your positions. Or, if that's not something you're interested in, compensation, financial, public acknowledgement." Olivia and Alyssa exchanged a look. They didn't want their old jobs back. That version of their careers had died the day they were thrown away like liabilities. But they weren't here for revenge anymore. They were here for closure. "I don't want my job back," Olivia said firmly, "but I want you to name what was done to me, to all of us." Nathan nodded. "We're preparing a formal statement. You'll have approval over any public communications that include your name." "And the others?" Olivia pressed. "The ones you haven't reached out to yet?" "They'll be contacted," he promised. "We're working on it." It wasn't perfect, it wasn't justice, but it was a beginning. A few weeks later, the company released an open letter on its website. "To those who were silenced, ignored, and mistreated, we failed you. We allowed ambition to outweigh integrity. We thank those brave enough to hold us accountable. We're rebuilding, and we will not forget." Olivia didn't attend the press conference. She didn't need to. Instead, she spent the afternoon at a bookstore cafe, her laptop open, Alyssa beside her, both working on a proposal to start something new, a nonprofit to support women in toxic work environments. Because the truth was, Olivia hadn't just reclaimed her dignity, she had found her voice, and now she was going to use it for more than just herself. Chapter 7. I walked into the new office and froze. Olivia hadn't expected to feel anything when she stepped into the office of her new consulting client. After everything she'd been through, this was supposed to be a fresh chapter. She'd been hired as an external advisor for a startup aiming to reform its workplace culture, an ironic full-circle moment, considering what she and Alyssa had endured. Her work had taken off since the exposé. She was now sought after not just for her marketing expertise, but for her integrity, her insight, her story. But as she stepped through the glass doors into this new building, her breath caught. She froze. Because the receptionist who looked up at her was someone she hadn't seen in over a year. Savannah? The woman's eyes widened just slightly, but then her smile returned, calm and professional. "Olivia, welcome." Savannah had once worked under Danielle. She wasn't high up, just a junior assistant, but Olivia remembered her well. Smart, quiet, loyal to the wrong people. A rush of memories surged forward. Late nights, whispered warnings, half-hearted apologies. Savannah had been one of the last people to make eye contact with Olivia as she left the building for the last time, eyes full of something unreadable. Now, here she was again. Olivia hesitated, heart racing. She reminded herself, this is a new place, a new team, a new role. You don't owe anyone your silence anymore. She nodded. Good to see you. Inside the office, things moved quickly. The founders of the startup greeted her warmly, eager to show off their progress. They'd hired her to lead a 2-week audit. interviewing staff, reviewing structures, making tough calls. It wasn't personal, but it became personal because on day 3, she discovered the company's culture wasn't broken, it was infected. And at the center of that infection was someone very familiar, Savannah. Only now, she wasn't a receptionist. She was director of operations, and the quiet. Manipulation Olivia had once witnessed was now fully weaponized. Employees were afraid to speak openly. One assistant accidentally left a Slack window open, showing messages where Savannah threatened to cut loose anyone who didn't fall in line. There were whispers of surveillance software being installed on company devices. One intern, visibly shaking, asked Olivia in private, "Are you really here to help, or is this just for show?" That broke something inside her. No matter how far she thought she'd come, the fight was still happening, just with new faces, new names. Olivia sat in her temporary office that night, the building mostly dark around her. She opened her laptop and drafted a report. It wasn't easy to write. She was aware of the risks, naming someone she had history with, potentially reigniting old wars. But she wrote the truth, and at the end of the document, she added, "Accountability isn't about who you used to be. It's about who you choose to be when no one's watching." The next morning, she handed it to the founders. They read it in silence. When they looked up, she saw it in their eyes. They knew, and they acted, swiftly. Savannah was asked to take a leave of absence pending investigation. Within the week, her resignation came in. No theatrics, no denials, just a quiet end to a dangerous influence. Olivia stayed on for the full audit, helping the company lay new foundations. She wasn't angry anymore. She didn't feel vindicated, just calm. She had frozen when she walked into that office, but she hadn't stayed frozen. She had moved forward, and this time, she wasn't the one walking away with her head down. Chapter 8. Danielle tried to rebuild her reputation, and I let her speak. It was a chilly Thursday morning when Olivia received an unexpected email. Subject: Panel Discussion Invitation. Ethics in Corporate Leadership. At first, she almost dismissed it. These kinds of requests had become more frequent since the expose went viral. But this one had a surprising twist. We're hosting a live-streamed roundtable on workplace ethics. One of our confirmed speakers is Danielle Monroe. We believe a counterpoint perspective from someone directly affected by her leadership would offer meaningful balance. Would you be open to joining? Olivia's first instinct was a visceral no. Every fiber of her being recoiled at the idea of sitting across from Danielle again. But then something in her shifted. What if this wasn't about Danielle? What if this was about closure? She agreed. And 3 weeks later, Olivia walked onto a sleek, modern stage set with minimalist lighting, cameras, and a small audience. The event was live, streamed to thousands across LinkedIn, YouTube, and a few professional forums. Danielle was already seated when Olivia arrived. She looked different, older, tired. Her once commanding posture slightly collapsed in on itself, but when their eyes met, Olivia offered a nod. Danielle didn't nod back. The panel began with the moderator giving a brief introduction of each speaker, 3 professionals plus Olivia and Danielle. Then came the question that everyone watching was waiting for. Danielle, what do you believe led to the downfall of your previous company? Danielle cleared her throat. It's easy to say leadership failed, but truthfully, I failed. I built a culture that rewarded silence, punished dissent, and justified it all in the name of performance. At the time, I thought I was strong, but I was afraid of vulnerability, afraid of appearing weak. So I surrounded myself with people who told me what I wanted to hear. She paused. I owe a lot of people apologies, especially one. All eyes turned to Olivia. The moderator spoke gently. Olivia, Would you like to respond? She took a breath. I appreciate that Danielle is here today, and I believe people can grow. But accountability doesn't stop with an apology. It continues in how you live afterward. What we say here today doesn't mean much if it's not backed by action. Danielle didn't flinch, but she didn't respond either. The discussion continued, touching on power dynamics, whistleblowing, and healing after betrayal. But it wasn't the content that left a mark. It was the energy. For the first time, Olivia wasn't reacting to Danielle. She was defining the conversation. After the panel, there was a moment backstage, just the two of them. Danielle approached slowly. I meant what I said. I've started therapy. I've stepped down from all corporate boards. I'm trying to be better. Olivia didn't smile, but she didn't walk away. That's good, she said. I hope you keep going, but I'm not your redemption arc. Danielle nodded. I know. And just like that, they parted. No dramatic final words, no forced closure, just a quiet end to a very loud history. That night, Olivia sat alone on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker. She wasn't angry anymore. She didn't feel victorious. She felt free. Danielle had spoken, and Olivia had listened. But now, she was ready to tell the next part of her story, without anyone else's voice in the way. Chapter 9. The day I told my daughter the truth. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind that wrapped the city in a golden haze. Olivia had spent the morning cleaning, distractedly folding laundry and rearranging books she hadn't touched in years. But her mind wasn't on chores. It was on Emma. Her daughter was nearly 12 now, sharp-eyed, curious, and heartbreakingly observant. The kind of girl who didn't just ask questions. She remembered the pauses in your answers. And lately, she'd been asking about Olivia's old job. Mom, why don't you work at the office anymore? Why did that lady on YouTube mention your name? Is it true you got someone fired? Olivia had always dodged gently. I work from home, now. Or grown-ups sometimes disagree, or that's a complicated story. But today, as Emma sat cross-legged on the living room rug with a bowl of cereal, Olivia felt a shift. She sat down across from her. Hey, Em, can we talk for a minute? Emma looked up. Sure, what's up? And Olivia told her, not everything, but enough. She told her about Danielle, about how she'd once believed in someone who let her down, about the lie that cost her a job, her reputation, but gave her something far more important: clarity, courage, purpose. Emma listened quietly. At one point, she asked, "Did it hurt?" Olivia nodded. "A lot." Emma was silent for a beat, then said, "But you're okay now, right?" A small smile crept across Olivia's lips. "Yeah, I am, better even." Later that evening, they took a walk through the park. Emma reached for her hand. "I think you're brave." Olivia squeezed her daughter's fingers. "So are you." And as they walked, Olivia realized that telling the truth, even the hard, kind, didn't just free her from the past. It gave her daughter a story about strength, about falling and standing again, about becoming the kind of person who speaks, even when it's uncomfortable. The next day, Olivia received an email from a publisher who had seen the panel discussion. Subject: Memoir Opportunity. Your story is powerful. We'd love to talk about developing it into a book. For the first time in a long time, Olivia didn't hesitate. She clicked reply, because this time, she wouldn't let someone else tell her story. She would write every word herself. Chapter 10. What I found in Danielle's deleted emails changed everything. The night Olivia submitted her memoir proposal, she couldn't sleep, not from anxiety, but from something else. Closure was within reach, but there was one thread still tugging at her conscience: Danielle. Olivia hadn't heard from her in nearly a year. After the HR investigation, Danielle had resigned to pursue other opportunities. Rumor was she'd moved states, blocked Olivia on everything, vanished as if none of it had happened. But part of Olivia still wondered why. Not just why Danielle had betrayed her, but why she had done it so strategically, so calculated. And then Olivia remembered something: Danielle's old company laptop, the one IT had wiped before returning it to HR. Olivia had once been close to the IT manager, Jake. He'd always liked her, professionally and personally. When she reached out, he agreed to meet at a local cafe. Over coffee, Jake said something that made Olivia's heart stop. Funny thing, before we wiped Danielle's drive, I backed up some of her files, just in case HR needed to revisit anything. He slid a flash drive across the table. Might be nothing, but if it helps you sleep, take a look. That night, Olivia plugged it in. Most of the folders were mundane: project documents, meeting notes, vacation requests. But one folder, buried 3 levels deep, was labeled, "Do not open, personal." Inside it, dozens of emails, old, unsent drafts, screenshots, saved correspondence from Danielle's personal email account, and what Olivia read made her sick to her stomach. There were emails to a former boss, someone who'd once tried to recruit Danielle into another firm, but required clean references to finalize her offer. Danielle had sabotaged Olivia so she could take her job. "I know you said you needed someone at a higher level. I can make that happen," Danielle had written. "Olivia's in the way, but give me 2 weeks." There were screenshots of Slack messages, ones she'd edited or presented out of context during the HR complaint. Even worse, she had been coaching another junior employee to exaggerate complaints about Olivia, pressuring them with promises of advancement. It hadn't just been betrayal, it had been a setup. Olivia stared at the screen in disbelief, and then she knew exactly what to do. She forwarded the files to the HR director, attached her statement, made it clear she didn't want revenge. She wanted the record corrected. 3 days later, HR responded. They were stunned, apologetic. Had this come to light earlier, our actions would have been very different. But now, with these documents, they offered to issue a formal public retraction, update Olivia's employment record, and provide a written recommendation for future opportunities. More than that, they launched a formal ethics investigation. Danielle, as it turned out, had since taken another corporate role. The HR team passed the evidence to her new employer. A month later, Olivia received a short, bitter message from Danielle's old company account. "You think you've won, but I was just trying to survive. You have no idea what I went through." Olivia didn't reply, because maybe Danielle was trying to survive, but that didn't excuse destroying someone else in the process. A year later, Olivia's memoir was published. False Friend, True Self, What Betrayal Taught Me About Integrity. It was raw, real, and honest. It climbed bestseller lists, and when she gave her first TV interview, she looked straight into the camera and said, "I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it so the next woman who feels silenced remembers that the truth has a way of resurfacing, even if it takes time." Emma sat in the front row during the book launch. After the applause died down, she hugged Olivia tight. "You didn't just survive, Mom, you won." Olivia smiled. "No, baby, we did. Sometimes betrayal hides behind polite smiles, but truth always finds a voice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real, raw stories of justice, heartbreak, and healing. Until next time, stay brave.